All right, good afternoon, class. This is Mr. Fitzgerald, and this is the video lesson that goes along with the article and the worksheet that I gave you today. You know, you're going to watch this video, read the information, do the questions, and then bring it tomorrow for homework. Before I give you the information, of course, I'm going to let you know what we're talking about and let you actually know what the question that you're going to answer is, so that you can keep it in the back of your head. So when you hear that information, you can go ahead and pause it and write it down, so you don't forget it. So that when you're done with the video, you can pretty much be done with your homework. All right. So the question, or what this is about, is the principle of art, principle of design, that we call contrast. Right now, that's what we're talking about the different principles that kind of the guidelines that go along with art, and the things that people manipulate and play around with that make art interesting. And we're talking about contrast. It's called contrast, C-O-N-T-R-A-S-T, contrast. All right, so very simple question. What is contrast? Tell me what contrast is. There's a whole lot going on with contrast, so it's best to just keep it simple right now. So what is contrast? All right. Again, what is contrast? C-O-N-T-R-A-S-T. All right, so you've heard probably that term before, contrast. You've probably heard the phrase compare and contrast. Compare is when you put two things beside each other and see how they're alike. Contrast is putting them beside each other to see how they're different. Okay, so contrast is you're talking about the difference and how different two objects are, or two things are from each other, and then what does that difference say? So the definition that we're going to use for contrast is the differences that artists create in their work to add interest or communicate a message. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start reading. Again, the definition is differences that an artist create in their work to add interest or communicate a message. All right, the differences, remember, the differences that an artist creates. All right, so contrast. How many contrasts do you see in the world around you? Think of the colors, textures, and shapes in your home or your school. There are light colors, dark colors, smooth surfaces, rough surfaces, large spaces in a room, small spaces in a desk drawer. There are contrasts in the line from straight to curved, thick to thin, black to white on black. All right, so contrast add interest and excitement to your surroundings and to our art. Artists and designers use contrast to create variety and excitement in their work. Study a painting, or look at a painting or a sculpture. How many ways has the artist used contrast? Consider contrast of warm colors and cool colors. So putting like a color like a red or hot pink against a color like blue, like a light blue or a dark blue. From large and small shapes, from rough textured areas to smooth areas, thin lines and thick lines, dark and light values, we're going to talk about that later. Look at the buildings and their landscaping. Notice the contrast of materials. So when you look at a piece of artwork, did they use different media, different materials to make it? And what does that say? How does the architect use contrast to add interest? Even though artists use contrast in their work, the finished project, so even though you're using all these differences, putting these different things together, the finished projects should still show unity, which we'll talk about later as well. So there it is, contrast, differences. It talks about contrast between colors, line usage, like the different lines that somebody might use, light and dark contrast, and to kind of show an example, on these three pieces of paper, I wrote the word contrast in a black marker, the same black marker. So it doesn't show up on here. Low contrast, it doesn't really contrast. It's on a black piece of paper. This one's a little bit lighter, so it shows up a little bit more. But there it is right there, the contrast between black and white. That's probably the most visible, most noticeable kind of contrast there is out there between black and white. Look at the pictures that I've included in this article. You've got the ones with the dolls. You've got the picture with the mountains You got the red mountains and the blue water here, the bright red of the mountain up front, and then the dark in the back, the dark brown in the back. You also have the picture. Look at these pictures right here. We're talking about the shadows. All right, the contrast is being used to show shadow of the portrait as well as the fabric. You have the contrast of the color here. They're using low contrast. Look at low contrast. There's not a big difference between the lightness and darkness and the different colors being used. And then of course you've got high contrast. This picture right here, this painting right here. The man who has dark skin color, dark complexion, and he's got a white robe on a white background. So what it does is it makes his head stand out more than anything, because the white robe kind of blends into the back, and so really create interest. The artist really creates interest by making this guy, this is his shirt he's wearing, as well as his skin, really stand out the most of anything in this whole painting. So contrast can be used a lot of different ways. Just notice, and we're going to be talking about a lot of different things. So just notice when I use that word contrast, I'm talking about the difference. And so there's your information. A lot of it was me explaining things and me giving examples, because it's kind of a weird one out there. It just applies to way too much to really just single it out in one short article. But so 6th and 7th graders, you're going to answer that question. You're going to write what is contrast, one, and then what is contrast, and you're going to write your answer in a complete sentence, please. And I gave you that definition earlier. And I also want you to write 2, and I don't have this written down, and I'm sorry, but I want you to just give me an example. Give me an example of contrast. It could be just something out of your head. It can be something that you've seen before. Don't use this one because I'm using it right now. But look at the American flag. You've got the blue background, dark blue square background with those white stars. The stars really pop out because of the black background, or the dark blue black background. And then of course you have the white and red stripes on top of that, which creates even more contrast. So give me an example, either out of your head or in real life, of contrast that's used effectively. So 8th graders, you're going to do the same thing, or you're going to answer the questions, but you're not going to push one, write 1 and then the answer 2, the answer. You're going to just write in paragraph form. Remember, you're answering the question in complete sentences, like contrast is blah, blah, blah. No numbers in paragraph form. And this is going to be very short. I understand this is very short, but we're going to be talking about contrast for a long time. It's very in-depth, and when we talk about value and line and shading and all that stuff, we're going to bring contrast back in the mix. So, all right, guys, there you go. There's contrast. Remember, it's not just with white and black. It's with pretty much everything that we see. Color, pretty much all the elements of art, which we'll talk about later. Color, texture, value, pretty much everything's contrast. There's differences. All right, so I'll see y'all tomorrow. Bye.